The 1980s gave us some of the most iconic films in history, and Roger Ebert, never one to miss a cinematic gem, had a few favorites that stood the test of time. From gritty dramas to sci-fi spectacles, here are some of Ebert's top picks from the decade that brought us everything from VHS tapes to neon fashion. David Mamet's directorial debut, House of Games, features Joe Mantegna as a gambling con man who pulls his psychiatrist, Dr. Ford, into his world of cons. Dr. Ford is dissatisfied with her life, feeling unable to help her patients, and finds a twisted joy in helping Mantegna's Mike run cons, using her ability to read people as an asset. Mamet's writing, as usual, is fantastic. Oliver Stone won his second Oscar for Platoon, a film he wrote based largely on his experiences in Vietnam. It's a brutal, disorienting watch, which is what Stone wanted. In his review of the film, Ebert said, "There are no false heroics in this movie, and no standard heroes," pointing out that the film doesn't romanticize war, but instead honestly captures the chaotic realities of conflict. Platoon was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, and the film won 4, including Best Picture and Best Director. Mississippi Burning is based on the real-life murder of 3 civil rights activists in 1964. It's not completely factual, but the late Sir Alan Parker's no-nonsense direction is a sobering recreation of the racially charged atmosphere of the time. Gene Hackman and Willem Dafoe play the FBI agents investigating the murders, and Frances McDormand earned the first of her 6 Oscar nominations for acting. She would go on to win 4 as Best Supporting Actress. Ran, the last of Akira Kurosawa's great epics, is a reimagining of Shakespeare's King Lear set in medieval Japan. After an aging warlord decides to retire and divide his kingdom between his sons, his decision sets off a civil war. The film earned Kurosawa his only Oscar nomination for Best Director, having spent more than a decade in pre-production, meticulously sketching storyboards for every shot. Ebert called the film a great, glorious achievement. Steven Spielberg's throwback to the swashbuckling adventures of the past is still an exhilarating movie to this day. Raiders of the Lost Ark follows our favorite risk-taking archaeologist as he attempts to outrace the Nazis in a search for the Ark of the Covenant. Filled with snappy dialogue, brisk pacing, and fantastic action, the film found the perfect action hero in Harrison Ford. The final, ironic shot is one of the greatest ever endings to a film. Stars Andre Gregory and Wallace Shawn also wrote the film, and even though the characters use their real names, they don't play themselves. Shawn plays a pretentious playwright struggling to make ends meet, and Gregory a successful theater director who has had an epiphany about life. Fans of The Princess Bride should listen for Shawn's one use of the word inconceivable, a word he would make infamous 6 years later. It makes for a good chuckle. 1989 was a great year for film, but in hindsight, the big winner at the Oscars that year, Driving Miss Daisy, falls short of Spike Lee's masterpiece. Do the Right Thing was a brutally honest look at race, with an uncomfortable ending. Perhaps most surprising of all was that it only earned 2 Academy Award nominations, Best Supporting Actor and Best Original Screenplay, but both were shut out. In his review of the film, Ebert marveled at the film's ability to appeal on all levels. "It works as science fiction," he said. "It's sometimes as scary as a monster movie, and at the end, when the lights go up, there's not a dry eye in the house." E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial was far and away the biggest hit of 1982, bringing in over $350 million. The film won 4 Oscars, including Best Score for John Williams. Sam Shepard's fantastic performance earned him a Best Supporting Actor nomination, and the film's impressive ensemble includes Ed Harris, Scott Glenn, Dennis Quaid, and Barbara Hershey. Bill Conti won an Oscar for Best Original Score, and the film won 4 Academy Awards in total, with additional wins in technical categories. Roger Ebert named Raging Bull the #1 film of the 1980s, and he isn't alone. It ranks number 4 on the American Film Institute's 100 Greatest Movies of All Time, one of only 6 films from the 1980s on the list. Not only is the film director Martin Scorsese's best work, De Niro was arguably never better in this Oscar-winning performance, besting even his work in Taxi Driver. His final scene in the film, in which he portrays Jake LaMotta's pathetic attempt to recite Marlon Brando's famous scene in On the Waterfront, is masterful.